Hello, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vengeance. I'm Adam.
How long ago did you decide to do that?
Listen, when we did our top 5 Batman movies, I was like, I should do it now. And I was like, no, I'll save it. It'll be better for the actual
That was a good choice.
Yeah. Nice. It works well with the red background, too.
Yeah.
And if that didn't already give it away, today we are finally getting to our spoiler-free review for Matt Reeves' The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, that came out in theaters about a week ago and is doing very well at the box office and is not 3 hours long. It's like 250. So
256, I believe it is, but that's including credits, so it's more like 245.
Right. So yeah, any people complaining about the length, it's under 3 hours, no problem.
Yeah. But yeah, this is our first review as a Speak, Film, and Enter. So we've got some topics we want to try to hit, and we're trying to establish a structure for our reviews. So we'll see how it goes first time around.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because generally we do more reviews than anything else, but just with the way that kind of our schedules went and wanting to do that anticipated movies episode first, we didn't actually get to a review until our third episode. But this is generally, I'd say about 2/3 of our episodes are probably reviews.
Yeah. And this is the first big one. So general thoughts. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I mentioned during our previous episode where we ranked our top 5 Batman movies that I'm not the biggest Batman fan in the world. I don't hate Batman, but I'm also not a big diehard. I can kind of take it or leave it. When I heard about this movie, that it was happening and we were making another one, I hard eye roll. I thought we do not need this at all, especially after I never saw the Ben Affleck ones, but after the Nolan trilogy, I just kind of felt like I don't need more.
Yeah. That's fair.
But I did find myself in rewatching all of those Batman movies, the older ones, for that episode, where a lot of them went down for me upon rewatch, and a lot of them started to feel the same. And then hearing that this was more of a detective mystery thriller, I actually oddly started to get really excited for this movie, and it, for me, did not disappoint at all. I had a very good time with this, as long as it is. I just had a blast, and it kind of shocked me because I went into it with guarded optimism. I want to say, like I like Matt Reeves. I love the Apes trilogy, and I like Robert Pattinson a lot. I liked all the casting I had heard of, but again, I was like, do we need another Batman movie?
Yeah.
Even if the answer might, and honestly probably is, no, we don't need another one. I like this a lot.
We get 1 to 2 Batmans every decade, so I mean,
right.
Seems that
way.
Of
the course.
I will go next, Nate, and I pretty much agree with what you said. I liked it. I thought that it did a really good job. After watching all of the live action Batmans over the last 2 weeks, I felt like it did a really good job of establishing its own unique vision of Gotham and the aesthetic and the way the characters are written. And like you said, it's portrayed more of a detective story. And I love that it just starts us off and he's 2 years in already. And it's just, we're skipping over the origin story. We're skipping over his parents dying. Like, he's Batman. You know who Batman is. And we're just going to tell like a gritty, kind of hard boiled, whodunit, digging into the secrets of Gotham, almost noir. And I felt like right away it established its own unique kind of style, and I liked it. And I thought that Robert Pattinson was a good Batman. I thought he did his own thing with it.
I agree with that too. I thought Pattinson did a great job. It was nice to see somebody a little bit younger in the role. I mean, we had Christian Bale, we had Ben Affleck, we've had Val Kilmer and George Clooney. Like, they were all, I think, a little bit older at those stages than Pattinson is.
Certainly, yeah.
So I liked seeing him in that young role, in that 2 years into the cowl, and
into
donning
that,
into the lifestyle. I loved that it was that noir, like we're taking a different view. Batman's not at his height. He's not the most powerful and the smartest and the richest person. He's just a guy right now. I really enjoyed that. So I guess without getting too much into that, should we go to our next category?
Yeah, let's do it. We don't always all agree on our reviews, but it sounds like maybe this might be one of those.
This could be one of the rare ones where we're all like right in line here.
Yeah.
What we liked, I can dive right into that. There's a lot of stuff
Go
I
for
liked
it.
about this movie. I
Me
think
too.
for how long it is, it never felt slow to me. I thought the pacing was phenomenal.
Mhm.
I mean, I do generally, as a rule of thumb, think every movie could be shorter.
Yeah.
And that is true for this movie, I think. But it didn't feel slow to me at any point. There wasn't any one particular stretch where I thought like, oh, they're kind of losing the thread here. So
Yeah.
the pacing's really fantastic. The score is out of this
Oh my,
world.
those 3 notes, they've been
Yeah.
stuck in my head ever since I saw it yesterday.
I also really like to kind of go back to the like detective angle a little bit.
Yeah.
I just like that it's not so action heavy. I like that it's about kind of figuring things out. And that 70s, like almost Chinatown or like Fincher style, like Seven or Zodiac kind of feel, where it's a gritty crime movie. And I just love the way that this movie looked. Other movies, like particularly the Burton ones, but even the Nolan ones, Gotham didn't ever feel that big to me. The Burton ones, especially, where because of the sets that were like so high with like narrow streets, it felt
really
claustrophobic.
cramped.
The Nolan ones, they do a lot of the sort of big shots, like aerial view of the city. But then when we're actually on the ground, it feels like everything's kind of taking place in like the same locations.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like anything's that far away from anything else. This was the first time where I really felt like this city is massive and it's impossible for him to be everywhere and have the impact that he's trying to have.
Yes. I really like that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it felt like
Adam,
a
we can't
real...
hear you unless you were speaking.
Oh, maybe a technical.
We'll let Adam get that technical part figured out. But
yeah, I'll just piggyback off of your point though. Like, right from the beginning, it gives us the idea that he can't be everywhere at once, how vast it is, and then even multiple parts within the movie, he's he's speeding to get home, or he's speeding to get over here, and it kind of lets us kind of ride along with him, and like I can't get there right away, like, and that again just kind of adds to like you were saying, the detective noir style. I mean, if he wasn't Batman and he was just a plucky detective and the Riddler was just a crazy serial killer, this could still totally work as just that type of movie. But instead they use the Batman world, and then they get to do a deep dive into Gotham's history, which I also thought was interesting. Like,
I thought that was really cool too. Great, we can hear Adam again.
Okay,
fantastic.
Nice. Okay. Perfect
What
time.
I said was that's what makes the opening scene so good. It kind of explains that. I mean, and to your point, Dylan, Gotham is its own character in all of the Batman iterations. It needs to be. It houses all these crazy villains. It houses Batman himself. Like, it's a living, breathing organism that has to evolve and change. That's what makes this. Telling us about that and expanding that world makes that a lot more interesting.
I did have 2 more things really quick that I wanted to mention that I liked. I was worried initially seeing how many villains were going to be in this movie, because we all remember the disaster that was Spider-Man 3. Like, it just always feels to me when you get a superhero movie, and because generally with a trilogy you get like the origin story, which has been done a million times, and then you get the second one where they've kind of like figured everything out, and it's usually really good and paced well, and everything fits together. And then the third one, they feel the need to go like bigger and bigger and bigger, so they add in like too many villains, and it feels overstuffed, and they don't really mesh together very well. This movie does a phenomenal job of not only giving the 3 villain characters, being Riddler, Penguin, and Catwoman, enough screen time, but the story itself, it makes sense for them all to be there. It doesn't just feel like we threw another one in because we wanted to. They felt organically like they fit in with the story, and I thought that was handled really well. And then, without getting into any spoilers as to how this is handled, I loved that this was the first Batman movie that really questioned whether or not what Batman is doing is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Batman Begins. I think Rachel is in Batman Begins is kind of the person that solidifies his philosophy with him or for him, so that he's fully fleshed out his philosophy before going and before being Batman, like in the city. He goes and trains and does all this other stuff, but his philosophy is hardened before he gets to be Batman. Here, he's still figuring it out.
Yeah. Like really figuring out. And the scenes where he is Bruce Wayne, it seems like he's so uncomfortable being Bruce Wayne, which is also different than most iterations of Batman. You know, usually Bruce Wayne is suave and cool and a ladies' man. And this was a Bruce Wayne who has been hiding from the spotlight for the last 15 years. And now we see what he's been doing with his time. Like, I just thought that was a great take on it. And then to your point, Nate, like, I also thought maybe there'll be too many villains, but I thought they did a really good job of basically, they kind of were able to compress it into two main stories. Like there's the murder mystery, who's doing it. And then like, there's the secrets of Gotham. And I just felt like they had those two things going at once. And it was really well done.
Totally agree.
All right. I think we can stop gushing a little bit. What are the points that you guys found that you didn't like about this iteration of Batman, if any?
Okay. Well, I mean, I felt when I saw it at first, I probably thought this was maybe like a 4.5, but the more I've thought about it, the last 30 minutes takes kind of a tonal shift, and I feel like goes in a direction like that wants to be more of a traditional superhero movie as opposed to the what we've been talking about, which is its own detective thing, almost more like Seven than like a Batman movie up until that point. And then I think it just felt like, oh, we need to do something more superhero-ish, and that's kind of what the last 30 minutes are for.
Sure. I have seen that as not a huge criticism but it's been a pretty common criticism online of the few that I've seen, where there's definitely a good chunk of people who seem to think like, yeah, once you get to the third act, they were kind of like, well, this is still a Batman movie.
Yeah. And we've got a couple different threads we want to tie up, or
you got to do some Batman stuff.
Yeah.
I have a very small list of sort of cons as far as this movie goes. Like I already said, it's too long, but unless it's the Lord of the Rings or like Once Upon a Time in America, I think any movie approaching 3 hours is too long.
Yeah.
I also thought that Gordon and Alfred's characters were kind of one-dimensional here and weren't given as much to do as the three villains were. I love the casting of Jeffrey Wright as Gordon. I thought he was very good, and his chemistry with Robert Pattinson was very good. A lot of their scenes started to feel a little like kind of samey. Like it just felt like every time it was with them, it was like, okay, Batman's got a theory, Gordon's got to confirm or deny or go, for some
he has
like
to hold the police.
Secrets.
He has to hold back the other cops who don't like Batman. It was kind of the same beats.
Yeah. And I just felt a little let down by that. I wasn't big on the casting of Andy Serkis as Alfred, and I felt like that was also pretty one note. He was just kind of there to deliver a lot of like exposition, and then he does get a little more to do later in the movie, but definitely the least involved. I remember Alfred being in a Batman movie in a really long time.
For sure. After watching the other live action ones, Alfred is a much smaller part of this than I think any of the other ones I've seen. Besides
definitely
maybe like Rises. And
then I think kind of our next category that we have queued up here is to talk a little bit about kind of the mystery angle versus superhero angle. Not to just transition away from this, if you guys had any negatives that you hadn't mentioned yet, but I do think that it does slightly fall victim to the trappings of the superhero genre as far as being a mystery movie goes. Okay. Not to dive too far into it.
Explain what you mean by that.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to be shocking and to have good twists when all of the characters on screen are people we've known for like 60 years.
Oh, that's fair. Like in any iteration of Batman, you would imagine that he's not going to die at the end, right? He's the superhero. He's the main character.
I'm just talking about like as they're uncovering the mystery and like some of the secrets of Gotham, it starts to turn into like, it's not going to be the dude that talked to him for 30 seconds at the beginning of the movie. Like it's just there's only so much you can do as far as mystery goes, I think, with a movie where you already know who all of the characters are.
Yeah, like
Adam, I think we lost you again.
Well, I'll say, Nate, like I do think that like the mystery there's a couple of different mysteries going on, but one of them is kind of who's the informant or who was the informant. And I figured that out pretty quick. And then when it was revealed, it was like, okay, yeah, duh.
And that gets to my point where you're like, it can only be like one of 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, these are small criticisms, but I am just wondering how you guys think this movie works as a superhero movie versus a crime thriller, because it's been marketed a lot as more of a crime thriller, but also a Batman movie. And I mean, do you think it works better as one or the other, or how did that go for you guys?
I honestly, I think it did a good job of balancing the two. I really think that it walked that line. But I guess if I had to choose what it works more as, probably a crime thriller, because I really think if that's what you're going in looking for, you'll be happy. But there's going to be Batman fans who are looking for a more grandiose superhero movie experience. And this is going to be so different than that I think, it can be a little polarizing, and there's going to be maybe certain people who think that it was just the wrong direction to go. It's too emo, or it's too whatever, too dark, or it's too long, right? I mean, so I get that. I feel like it's more open to criticism on the superhero movie side. On the crime thriller side, I feel like it's pretty dang good. I feel like it's like you could have like a marathon, like Seven, Zodiac, and the Batman, and
just watch a bunch of Fincher movies and then watch the Batman.
Yeah.
It feels much more like a crime movie set in a superhero universe as opposed to a superhero movie set in a crime verse, if you want to call it that, which I think is the intention, and I think it pulls it off wonderfully. I think dabbling in the era or the aesthetic of Gotham or the character of Gotham, like we talked about, is always going to be interesting, and making Batman just a subtle change to his character, making it more of like a noir, it's a new fresh take. It's always going to work, I think. And I think in this iteration, pulling in a non major villain. I mean, the Riddler's a major villain, but it's not the Joker like we always get. I think that's also exactly. I think that's another great touch. We can explore this universe, the Batman universe, more than just one villain or one iteration.
Yeah. Before we move on, just while we're talking, I mean, because it is a superhero movie, how did you guys feel about the action, or like how it was? Because there is CGI, but it's meant to be invisible. It's meant to feel very much like it was all practical effects. I mean, how'd you like the action in this?
I mean, I really liked it. It's less actiony than, say, the Nolan trilogy was, or even some of the Batfleck stuff was in Batman vs Superman or Justice League. But I'm fine with that. That's not the focus of this movie. He's also less experienced. He's only 2 years into this role. He's not like the ultimate badass kicking everybody's butt. I think I
like that he's a little unsure of himself.
Exactly. And he takes on like 4 or 5 guys, and you see him get punched, or you see him like shot at a couple times, and you're like, oh, he's not foul, or he's not infallible. He's still just a dude. I think my favorite scene, or one of my favorite shots action wise, was the car chase scene.
I thought it was a cool car chase.
When they add in that camera on like the side of the car, like the driver's side back, you get to see the whole thing in the turn. It was just, it was perfect. It was perfect. So I liked
that. I liked the when he comes out of the elevator and they're all trying to shoot him, and it's all like in the dark. I thought that was a cool style where all we get is the muzzle flashes, and kind of an ode to the end of which Star Wars movie is it that has the Vader scene at the very end?
Rogue One.
Rogue One.
Yeah.
Very Rogue One-ish.
Like that,
and I was digging that. How about you, Nate?
Yeah, I really appreciated that this was far less militaristic. The Batmobile is actually a car. It's not like some tank that was made for the military and just like for whatever reason never used.
Requisitioned for some rich billionaire.
Yeah, it all felt more grounded. It's a car. I really liked that they pulled back on the action and focused on the city and the characters and the mystery. It's just much more up my alley. So
and like cool gadgets, but gadgets that assist in the mystery, not just in the fights.
The contacts are like my favorite gadget he's had in a movie since, like, I don't know, maybe ever.
Since the shark repellent bat spray.
Yeah. That came in handy though.
It did. Yeah, they both came in handy. But
Yeah.
no, I like that too, that the gadgets were to serve the purpose of solving the mystery, not just like watch how many guys I can take out with this like cool like multiple boomerang thing.
Yeah.
That also like shocks people.
Yeah, I like the shock thing. The shock thing was an
Yeah.
interesting touch.
Speaking of the gadgets, like he didn't have like smoke bombs. Some of his like standard stuff, like he didn't have like a batarang necessarily or a bunch of them. He has like one. I think if we are gonna get more like sequels to this, I would love to see him evolve and start to think of like, oh, I can get more gadgets. I can do more things. He shocks those, like whatever he gets to create smoke bombs. I think that might be maybe I'll make smoke bombs for the next one. You know what I mean? That might be like an evolution of him, seeing him kind of grow as Batman.
Well, as we're getting into it, should we talk about how Robert Pattinson was as Batman?
Yes.
I liked him a lot. I think it's going to be a bit of a divisive performance because he is so, I mean, this word's been used on every review I've seen or read basically, but brooding is how he is. He's really emo. He's listening to Nirvana like all the time. But I think he fits. And I also really like, it's interesting to me how we get the least amount of Bruce Wayne in this movie, but this also felt like the most Bruce Wayne movie since Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah.
And that's because I think this one blurs the line between Bruce Wayne and Batman more than any other Batman movie that I've ever seen. Where like the Nolan ones and most of them, they feel like two separate characters to me. But this one, it really feels like it's Bruce under the mask, which also led to the feeling to Batman feeling more out of place, like comically at times than he has in any other movie for me, which I really enjoyed because it made me stop and think like, this is just a weird dude.
Who likes to dress up and run around town.
Like some weird LARPer in a bat suit who just like casually walked into this like crime scene and is like, dusting for clues next to the commissioner.
Let me look at it.
And
they slap his hand away. Stop it.
And I think it's because he hasn't gotten there yet. So you really feel like it's a person under there. And I thought that was all handled really, really well. And I thought Robert Pattinson played that phenomenally.
No, I definitely agree. I felt like you said, even though there wasn't a ton of Bruce Wayne scenes, it blurred the line, and there were parts where you definitely felt like, oh yeah, that's just a normal dude in a costume. Like I really liked how obviously there's a scene with the Riddler later where that's kind of the focus, but just having like the history of Gotham, and we delve into the history of his parents, and we learn some secrets about his parents along with him, and it lends itself well to actually digging into the Batman character the same way that Mask of the Phantasm, which I did finally watch. I watched that a few nights ago. It delves into that because it's kind of a love story. So that's how we're getting personal, and the movie's looking inward at Bruce. And this has that too, because we're digging into the history of his parents, and it's such a sore spot, and they do a good job of establishing that that's a sore spot. And so like his whole identity, he has like an identity crisis. It actually seems that way, not like in most movies where it's like, oh, he's just pulling this off effortlessly, just back and forth, and the last point on that was one of my favorite scenes, Adam, is when he wakes up in the police station.
Yes.
Freaks out because that's his real identity coming so close to being revealed. And he just immediately is just like full fight or flight. Like, And I just thought that was nice. So I thought Robert Pattinson gave a multi kind of layered performance. I thought he was good. And when he's in uniform kicking ass, he also is very physical and looks like he could kick ass and be athletic.
He's up to the challenge there for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
He hit all of the important parts of this movie. He gave it like heart and soul, and he gave it like mystery, and he gave like his performance just has so many different beats that he had to hit. Yeah. I mean, this whole movie is about either Batman growing, it's about his philosophy being solidified one way or another, and it's about his identity really being solidified as Batman, or as like, can I pull off both identities? So I thought he did a fantastic job at doing that. It's probably the most successful live action version we've seen of that. So I thought he killed it. I know we're big fans of Robert Pattinson on this podcast, but it just added to the list of another great performance.
Yep, totally agreed. With that said, how about the other performances? Anybody else stand out to you that you liked, didn't like?
Honestly, I would say the three that you mentioned earlier, Catwoman, Penguin, and the Riddler, I thought they were all perfectly cast, and honestly, I thought all three of them really brought it. Like Zoe Saldana
Zoe
was
Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz, I'm sorry.
No
Zoe
worries.
Kravitz was fantastic. Colin Farrell was great and really
unrecognizable.
different.
The
Yeah,
makeup department there, they should get nominated for an Oscar for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
seriously.
you
that
cannot
was,
tell it's Colin Farrell.
I saw it with my dad, and he said it reminded him a lot of like the Raging Bull Ray LaMotta, which I don't think you've seen, Nate, but just the
haven't
makeup
yet.
work that they put on De Niro, it was definitely like that vibe. And then I thought that Paul Dano did a really good job, because I feel like ever since Heath Ledger's performance, that kind of villain, crazy and all-encompassing knowledge and always a step ahead, but deranged, like it's been done kind of to death. So for him to pull that off in a way that felt at least, genuine,
Plausible.
but also like fresh and kind of his own, I thought it was really good, because that's kind of just been done so much in like the last 12 years.
Yeah, totally agreed. I thought Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman.
Aha, we both messed up.
Adam, you can join us when it's your turn.
There'll be Jeffrey wrong for me.
Yeah. The pigeon. Oh no, the penguin.
She just brought a lot of heart to this movie, and I love the dynamic between, she'll work with him when it suits her interests, where they're like sometimes on the same side, sometimes they're adversaries.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that worked particularly well given the direction that Matt Reeves went with this, with the criminal underworld vibe, where you kind of need somebody to like guide Batman into it, but they're not totally aligned all the time. So it can get a little complicated at moments. I thought she was fantastic. She was definitely my favorite. She might've been my favorite performance of the entire movie. Really. I thought she was just very engaging. And every time she was on screen, I just felt like the urgency, and it just felt like there was another level to the movie when she was on camera.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think they had to pull off, that kind of unique tension that Catwoman and Batman have always had. Like you said, they're kind of friends, but also they're enemies, but also they could be lovers. Like there's a lot. And I felt like whenever they were on screen, they had great chemistry together. So I agree. I think she was definitely stealing some scenes, as did Colin Farrell. I felt like he had a gravitas to his scenes and his performance.
I could watch him flee anybody in a car.
Yeah, or just like look out the window and like just like I literally like the last shot of him, and just it's setting up things for the future. I really thought like Colin Farrell did a really great job.
Yeah, I'll echo all of that. I'll echo all of that. I thought Zoe Kravitz is probably. I think I'll put Robert Pattinson as my favorite, and then I'll put Zoe Kravitz. But because of that tension that they have to walk such a fine line throughout, because she's in a majority of scenes as well as Robert Pattinson is. I think probably those are probably my two favorites. The weakest, like you said earlier, Andy Serkis doesn't really have a whole lot to do. Hopefully that evolves, that relationship evolves. As if we get more Batman movies with Reeves and Pattinson and stuff. But yeah, those are
John Turturro as Falcone was nice, just because everyone else is killing it, and he came in as just the pro, just kind of straightforward. I just thought he was really
allowed to be a little relaxed and just like a little smooth.
I liked how smooth he was, where everybody else was like grinding their teeth the whole movie, basically. He was just like, I got this under control, and I know it, so I'm a little loose.
Yeah. And his scene with Batman is actually really, when I see this again, I'll be re-examining that, because that's a very important scene. And last thing I'll say is just to touch on Dano again. I felt like it was a mix of the Joker. There was definitely some Joker elements and some lines he had that seemed taken right from The Dark Knight. Jigsaw from the Saw movies.
Yeah.
He definitely had some, and it gets pretty dark sometimes. And then John Doe from Seven, especially when we see his apartment. Right. And it's his idea that we're going to be remembered for this. Like it was just like a melding of those three kind of classic villains.
Matt Reeves is not hiding his influences in this movie.
He's leaning into them,
which is the right move. Absolutely.
Yeah, it worked. All right.
And then lastly, before we get to our star ratings at the end, who is this for? Who do we think is going to like this? Who do we think is not going to like this? I would say, I think if you're into Batman for the gadgets and the action and just like the doing super cool superhero Batman stuff, this might not be your favorite one. I mean, if you're that big of a diehard, you're going to see it regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that this will appeal to people who are a little lukewarm on Batman, like I am. If you like crime movies, if you like David Fincher's Seven and Zodiac, or like the movie from Bong Joon-ho, Memories of Murder, or even going back to things like Chinatown from like the 70s. If you like stuff like that and don't just hate everything superhero, I think you're really going to be into this movie.
Yeah, if you like gritty, hard-boiled kind of thrillers where you have to figure out the mystery, I think you're going to like it. And even if you really don't like superhero movies, it's not in your face with that element. It's just kind of part of the scenery, and I think you'll be able to appreciate it. I mean, even even if you're not a big Batman person, this might make you see Bruce Wayne and Batman and just kind of what that character is a little differently, maybe a little deeper.
Yeah. The movie's more about other things than just like another Batman version, right?
Yeah, stopping a crazy villain.
Yeah, I will say we went to the Friday showing, like a 7:00 showing, and it was a packed theater. I did see a bunch of people with kids that I would describe as too young to see this movie, even though it's only PG-13.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people were really excited to be like, "Oh, just a new Batman! It's gonna be new and fresh," and they brought kids to it, and it was like, it's definitely too dark for your 10-year-old, your 10 or under. But they'll appreciate it in like 8 years. 10 years, when they're 18, 20, somewhere in there, I think they'll really get a kick out of it. But I saw a lot of people walking out. Yeah. They'll get it. They'll finally understand. So yeah.
For sure. And if you like Pattinson, you got to see it. If you're a Pattinson fan, you just have to see it. Come on.
All right. We're going to take a very short break, and then we'll be back with our star ratings. All right. I guess I'll go first because our program put me up here and decided that I should go first here. As you saw, if this is the first time you've watched us or listened to us on a podcast, we rate from 1 to 5, with 1 being terrible and 5 being a masterpiece and 3 being right in the middle with a solid movie that accomplishes what it's trying to do. For the Batman, I'm going to give this a rock solid 4 out of 5. I thought this was a very good superhero movie. I mean, this is generally as high as I go for superhero movies. For me, a lot of the time, especially like Marvel, it seems like it's between like a 3 and a 4 for like every Marvel movie. Like they've got a really high floor. They're kind of capped on their ceiling a little bit. This went to areas that I haven't seen Marvel movies go to. I do really want to see this again. Luckily, it is going to be on HBO Max in April. So, instead of maybe going out to the theater for the second time,
I'll definitely be rewatching it.
Yeah, for a 3-hour movie, I'll be highly anticipating when it's available on streaming in April. But 4 out of 5 for me. This is a very good movie.
I can go next if that works. So I'm also going to give this 4 stars. I really, really liked it. I want to give it 4.5, but I think it might move up upon rewatch. But there were a couple things that I wasn't crazy about. I know we talked about Jeffrey Wright, so Gordon not having amazing impact by the end of the movie. He's just around. Andy Serkis being kind of a low point. But the things I did like, I loved the car chase scene. The theater experience was phenomenal, minus the people walking out. The explosions that happen shook the whole theater, shook my body. Some of the punches that hit are just like they rock you to your core. Like he's getting hit hard. It's not just the thud of the noise that hits you. It's the full shaking of it, which I think will be lost a little bit unless you have a really good sound system at home. But loved all those pieces. I know we've talked about this. I love the philosophy that goes on. I love the growth that happens here. I'm just really excited to see if we can get another one because I thought this was so good. So 4 for me. Dylan, on to you. Did we lose somebody?
I don't know. Hopefully he doesn't have any kind of large delay.
All right, well, that's on to me. And I will also be giving this a 4.
Nice.
Yeah, I will also be giving this a 4. So it's funny that we all are up on the same page for our first review. Again,
Very
we
rare.
not always all agree on everything, but for all the things we talked about, I just think this is a really strong movie in general with the detective story, and also having watched all the live action Batmans, I felt like it fit right in to the Batman world. It had its own unique version of it. I loved the aesthetic. I thought the action was great. I thought Pattinson was very good. And really, the only things that hold it back from like a 4.5 or 5, all are in kind of the last hour. I feel like the first like hour and a half of this, it was like at a 5 for me. I was like, they are laying everything out. I'm digging it. And then, like I mentioned, toward the third act, it loses me maybe a little bit. I can't really go into my criticisms without giving away spoilers. But I am definitely looking forward to seeing this again. And yeah, if you're even not a huge Batman fan, but you maybe just want to check out what all the buzz is about and maybe go see a movie. If you haven't gone and seen a big movie in a while, it won't disappoint. It's a fun version of the Batman story. So I'm going to give it a solid 4, and it might go up on rewatch.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Nice. All right. So from here, I guess do we want to just end the show? Do we have any final thoughts that we want to get to?
My final thought, I guess, just to touch on what you kind of mentioned, Adam, if there is a second one with these same people, I'm totally down for it. I hope they don't rush it. I hope they think of a good, solid, sturdy story like they had with this one, and actually with, commit to fleshing out characters and just really the whole detective, vulnerable human being vibe. And if they stick with that, I think it could go in really interesting directions.
I agree with that.
I agree. I do think, though, the second one, if there is a second one, this could go down a little bit for me, depending on if they, like I mentioned before, I really liked how they questioned what Batman is doing.
Mm-hmm.
If they're able to build off of that in an interesting way, then this will stay rock solid for me. If it just goes right back to being a regular Batman movie after this, then this might go a little bit down if I know that they didn't really follow through on some of that promise,
That's
but
fair.
we'll see.
Yeah, if they follow through on the promises of some of the things we've talked about and some of the things towards the end of the movie that maybe do not get down a little bit, they follow through on some of those things, I think a sequel would be phenomenal. It doesn't have to be a trilogy. If they just make the second one like an end point and make it, I would do another 3 hours of this universe. We talked about it being a little long. I'll take it. If you fully invest in it, I'll take a 3-hour movie. So that's my last thing.
All right. Well, yeah, we like to end the shows with a random movie quote. So whose turn is it this episode?
It's mine.
All right. Take it away, Nate.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for. I agree with the second part.